The Sterling estate was not so much a home as it was a statement. It sat atop a manicured hill, a sprawling monument of glass and steel that seemed to gleam with a cold, impersonal pride. Every perfectly aligned shrub, every flawlessly polished window, whispered of a wealth that was meticulous, calculated, and deeply conscious of itself. Within this citadel of affluence, David Sterling moved with the quiet assurance of the man who had built it, not inherited it. His was a success carved from long hours and relentless focus, a fact he never forgot, even as he now employed hundreds who had forgotten it for him. His office, a cavernous room within the house, was his sanctuary, all rich mahogany and soft leather, smelling of old books and expensive polish. It was here, on a rain-spattered Saturday morning, that the first thread of the day's unraveling began. David was immersed in the quiet hum of weekend work, the silence of the big house a canvas for his concentration. His daughter, 8-year-old Mia, was his constant companion on these days, a small, bright presence he cherished. She was a curious child, with her father's thoughtful eyes and a spirit that had not yet been polished to the same cold sheen as the house around her. Bored with her books and toys, she had slipped from the office on a well-trodden path of exploration, her small feet silent on the vast, plush carpets. Her destination was often the kitchen for a secret cookie, but today, a sound from a part of the house usually silent on a weekend drew her attention. It was the faint, rhythmic swish of a broom, followed by the low murmur of a gentle voice. Following the sound, Mia found herself standing before the slightly open door of a small, utilitarian break room rarely used by the family. Inside, she saw a woman she vaguely recognized, dressed in simple, clean blue trousers and a shirt, methodically sweeping the floor. But it wasn't the woman who held Mia's gaze. It was the girl. She was perched on the edge of a plastic chair, a book open on her knees, her small finger tracing the lines of text as she read silently to herself. She looked to be a year or so older than Mia, with serious, intelligent eyes and hair braided neatly away from her face. Mia, an only child perpetually hungry for company, stood frozen in the doorway, captivated. The woman, Anya Clark, looked up and saw the little girl in the expensive dress. A flicker of worry passed over her face, the instinctual caution of someone who knew their place in the hierarchy of this house was precarious. But Mia's smile was not one of judgment, but of pure, unadulterated curiosity. "Hello," Mia said, her voice small in the quiet room. The girl looked up from her book, her own expression one of shy surprise. "I'm Mia. What are you reading?" The girl, Elena, held up the book. It was a story about a spacefaring rabbit, one of Mia's own favorites. The ice in that instant shattered completely. Anya, seeing the genuine interaction, allowed herself a small, relieved smile and returned to her work, keeping a watchful but discreet eye on the two children who had found a common world in the pages of a book. This became the new secret rhythm of their Saturdays. While David worked, Mia would sneak away to the break room. Anya would always have a small juice box for her, a kind gesture that meant the world to Mia. She and Elena would sit in the corner, their heads bent together over books, their whispers weaving tales of fantasy and adventure. Mia learned that Elena was very smart, her words sometimes big and complicated, and that she loved stories more than anything. Elena learned that Mia was lonely and craved a friend who didn't care about her father's money. They were two solitary stars who had accidentally drifted into the same orbit, and a fierce, unspoken friendship blossomed in that sterile little room. The inevitable request came one evening at the Sterling dinner table. The crystal glasses and fine china seemed to amplify Mia's excited chatter. "And then Elena said the dragon wasn't evil, just misunderstood, and I think she's right, Daddy, and can she please come over? Can we have a playdate? Please?" Chloe Sterling, Mia's mother, paused with her fork halfway to her lips. A playdate. She pictured the daughter of some corporate executive or perhaps a renowned surgeon. A useful connection. She beamed, a brilliant, practiced smile. "Of course, darling. What a wonderful idea. We'll make it a proper event. I'll arrange for a catered lunch and we can set up the tea set in the garden pavilion." She was already mentally composing the guest list and the menu, seeing it as a perfect opportunity to showcase their lifestyle. She didn't ask for a last name. She didn't need to. Her daughter's friend, she assumed, would naturally be from a world as rarefied as their own. The day of the playdate dawned bright and clear. Chloe was a whirlwind of orchestrated perfection. The garden was immaculate. A small table was set with a lace cloth, tiny sandwiches with the crusts cut off, petit fours, and a porcelain tea set so delicate it looked like it might shatter if you looked at it too hard. Mia was practically vibrating with excitement, dressed in a brand new dress, clutching her favorite book to share with Elena. Chloe, wearing a designer outfit that looked casually thrown on but had taken an hour to perfect, glanced at the clock. Any minute now. A car engine, not the purr of a luxury sedan but the older, weaker cough of a modest compact car, sputtered to a stop in the driveway. Chloe peered from the window, her perfectly sculpted brow furrowing in confusion. This had to be a mistake. A delivery perhaps. But then the passenger door opened and a woman got out. It took Chloe a moment to place her, the cleaner from David's office building. The woman was dressed neatly but plainly, holding the hand of a little girl in a clean, but clearly store-brand sundress. The little girl was holding a wrapped present, a book-shaped parcel, her face a mixture of hope and nervousness. They walked toward the front door. A cold dread began to pool in Chloe's stomach. This couldn't be. It simply couldn't. The doorbell rang, a chime that echoed through the grand hall. Mia squealed and ran for the door, but Chloe was faster, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. She pulled the heavy door open, her body blocking the entrance. Her eyes swept over Anya and Elena, and the initial confusion on her face curdled into a mask of pure, undiluted disgust. She recognized them now. The help. Can I help you? Chloe's voice was icy, devoid of the warmth she had reserved for the imaginary executive's daughter. Anya, sensing the sudden violent shift in atmosphere, instinctively pulled Elena a little closer. Mrs. Sterling, Anya began, her voice polite but firm. I'm here to drop off Elena. For the playdate with Mia. She gave a small, hopeful smile, trying to bridge the impossible gap. The word playdate on Anya's lips seemed to confirm Chloe's worst nightmare. Her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. The facade of the gracious hostess evaporated completely, leaving only the raw, ugly snobbery beneath. She didn't even look at Elena. Her gaze was fixed on Anya with a look of sheer contempt. There appears to be a rather significant misunderstanding, Chloe said, her voice dripping with condescension. She spoke loudly, ensuring her words carried to where Mia was now standing, frozen in the hallway, her little face beginning to crumple. This isn't a community center, Chloe continued, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. We don't entertain the help at our home. This is for our family and for our real friends. She finally let her eyes drop to Elena, and the look she gave the child was so full of cold dismissal it was a physical blow. My daughter does not need to be associating with your kind. It's entirely inappropriate. I suggest you leave before you embarrass yourselves further. The cruelty of the words hung in the air, toxic and suffocating. Anya's face went pale, then flushed with a heat of humiliation and a protective fury. She looked down at Elena, whose eyes had filled with tears, the carefully wrapped gift now hanging limply at her side. Anya's first instinct was to shield her child from this venom. She pulled Elena tight against her leg, turning her away from Chloe's hateful gaze. Without another word, her own eyes glittering with a mixture of anger and profound hurt, she turned and walked quickly back to their car, her back straight with a dignity Chloe Sterling could never hope to possess. Inside the house, Mia was sobbing, great heaving cries of confusion and heartbreak. Why, Mommy? What? She's my friend. Chloe slammed the door shut, the sound final and absolute. She turned to her distraught daughter, her own face a mask of irritation. Stop that crying immediately, she snapped. It's undignified. You will forget about that little nobody. She is not and will never be your friend. Do you understand me? We do not mix with people like that. She strode away, leaving Mia alone in the vast, cold hallway, sobbing over the shattered pieces of her first real friendship, the untouched tea set and tiny sandwiches sitting in the sunny garden, a grotesque parody of the happy day that was supposed to be. The silence that descended upon the Sterling home was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, cold, and waiting for a storm. The sleek, silent car that was David Sterling's haven glided up the long, winding driveway, its tires crunching softly on the immaculate gravel. He had concluded his overseas video calls hours ahead of schedule, a rare gift of time he intended to spend surprising his daughter, perhaps finally building that elaborate model castle that lay in pieces in its box in her playroom. The house, as always, looked picture-perfect, a postcard of untouchable success. Yet, as he neared the final curve, a different picture came into view, one that sent a silent, cold alarm ringing through him. A modest, older car was pulling away, its movement not smooth but almost jerky, as if the driver's vision was blurred. And in the brief moment it passed his window, David saw the profile of Anya Clark, the weekend cleaner from his office building, a woman he knew to be composed and diligent. But her face was not composed now, it was a stark mask of anguish, her jaw clenched tight against a tide of emotion. And beside her, he caught a heart-wrenching glimpse of a little girl, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. His eyes snapped back to his own home. There, framed in the colossal oak doorway, stood his wife, Chloe. But it was not her posture of triumphant dismissal that held his gaze, it was the small figure just inside the hall. Mia was crumpled on the cold marble floor, her body racked with heaving, uncontrollable cries, the kind that come from a place of profound and utter devastation. David killed the engine and was out of the car in one fluid motion, his briefcase forgotten on the passenger seat. The perfectly manicured lawn, the gleaming windows, the silent testament to his wealth, it all faded into a meaningless blur. His entire world had narrowed to the sound of his daughter's heart breaking. He moved past Chloe, who opened her mouth to speak, undoubtedly to offer some polished, self-justifying version of events. He didn't even look at her. He walked straight to Mia, his large frame folding down onto the floor beside her, gathering her into his arms. She buried her face in his suit jacket, her tears soaking through the expensive fabric. "She's Jijuan, Daddy," Mia choked out between sobs. "Mommy was so mean to Elena and her mommy. She said she was a nobody. But she's my best friend." The words were a jumbled, emotional torrent, but to David they were perfectly clear. He looked over Mia's trembling head at his wife. His voice, when he finally spoke, was dangerously quiet, a low rumble that was far more terrifying than any shout. "What did you do, Chloe?" Chloe, defensive and immediately on the attack, waved a dismissive hand. "David, really? It was a simple misunderstanding. That woman, the cleaner, had the audacity to show up here with her child, assuming there was some sort of playdate. I simply corrected the situation. Mia cannot be fraternizing with the help. It's inappropriate. She'll get over it." Each word was another nail in the coffin of David's patience. He saw it all now, the departing car, the tears, his daughter's anguish, and it crystallized into a horrifying picture of his wife's breathtaking cruelty. He stood up, lifting Mia gently into his arms. He carried her into his study, away from her mother's cold presence, and sat with her in his big leather chair. He held her until her sobs subsided into hiccups, and then, with infinite patience, he coaxed the whole story from her. He learned about the secret meetings in the break room, the shared books, the kind woman with the juice boxes, the brilliant and shy girl who was Mia's first true confidant. He learned about the excited invitation and the cruel, humiliating dismissal at the door. Mia's story was not one of social missteps. It was a story of friendship betrayed, of kindness met with malice. And it was a mirror held up to his own life, reflecting the humble beginnings he had never forgotten, the memory of his own mother working 2 cleaning jobs to keep a roof over their heads. Chloe hadn't just insulted a woman and a child. She had spit on the very struggle that had built the life she so enjoyed. He walked back out into the hall where Chloe stood, armed and ready for a fight about status and appearances. David didn't give her the chance. The cold anger in his eyes silenced her before she could speak. "That cleaner," he said, his voice like chips of ice, "possesses more grace, more strength, and more human decency than you could ever hope to understand. You humiliated a hard-working, honorable woman. You traumatized her innocent child. And you broke the heart of our own daughter, all to feed your own pathetic, shallow snobbery." He took a step closer, and Chloe instinctively flinched back from the raw disappointment radiating from him. "You think their worth is determined by their tax bracket? Your worth, Chloe, is currently in the negatives. You have failed as a hostess, as a mother, and most fundamentally as a decent human being." His condemnation was absolute. He turned away from her, the discussion clearly over. For him, the path forward was not about arguing, it was about action. He went to his desk, found the employee files, and located Anya Clark's contact information. This was not a situation for a phone call. This demanded a personal response. He told Mia to get her coat. They were going for a drive. The navigation system led him to a part of the city he never saw from the tinted windows of his usual car. The apartment building was modest but well kept, a world away from the sterile luxury of the Sterling estate. He held Mia's hand tightly as they walked up the stairs. He could hear the faint sound of crying from behind the door. His heart felt like a stone in his chest. He knocked softly. Anya opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed and wary. Seeing the millionaire and his daughter standing on her doorstep was clearly the last thing she expected. She looked behind him as if expecting Chloe to appear next. But David spoke first, his voice low and filled with a sincerity that was unmistakable. "Mrs. Clark," he said, "I have come to apologize. There is no excuse for what happened today. My wife's behavior was despicable, cruel, and profoundly wrong." He looked past her to where Elena was sitting on a worn but clean sofa, clutching a tissue. He then looked down at Mia, who gave him a tiny, encouraging nod. Mia would like to apologize as well. Mia stepped forward, her small voice trembling but clear. "I'm so sorry, Elena. My mommy was mean. You're my best friend. And I'm sorry, Mrs. Clark." The raw, honest apology from the child did what no amount of adult words could. Elena looked up, and a tiny bridge of understanding was built between the two girls. Anya's defensive posture softened slightly, though the hurt in her eyes remained. David knew words, even sincere ones, were not enough. "I cannot undo what was said," he continued, "but I can try to make amends. I would like to ask your permission, Mrs. Clark, for a real playdate. Here or at a park, wherever you and Elena would be most comfortable. And I would like your permission to do one thing more." He explained, not as a patronizing benefactor, but as a man who recognized potential and believed in investing in it, his proposal to establish a fully funded college savings plan for Elena. "It's clear she is a remarkable and bright young woman. This isn't charity, it's an investment in a future that deserves every opportunity to flourish." The gesture was so vast, so unexpected, and so devoid of the condescension she had faced earlier that Anya was left speechless. It was a gesture that spoke of respect, not pity. After a long moment, she gave a slow, grateful nod. That afternoon, David Sterling sat at a small formica table in a modest apartment, drinking tea and talking with Anya Clark about books and schools and dreams, while in the next room, the sounds of quiet conversation and then joyful laughter finally emerged from Mia and Elena. The true wealth in that room was not in a bank account, it was in the hard-won dignity, the offered forgiveness, and the resilient friendship mending itself. Back at the cold, gleaming estate, David was clear with Chloe. Her world of superficial judgments was over. She would seek counseling. She would examine the deep-seated prejudices that had led to this. Her future in their family depended on a fundamental change of heart, not just a perfunctory apology. The lesson was etched into the very air they breathed, that a person's value is measured by the content of their character and the kindness in their heart, never by the size of their wallet or the job on their paystub. The clean sweep had begun, not with a broom but with a long-overdue cleansing of the spirit. If you found this story meaningful, a tale that reminds us to look beyond surfaces and value the true heart within, then consider subscribing for more narratives that explore the powerful lessons hidden in everyday life. Your support helps us continue to share stories that matter.